Okay, Mrs. Dell, if you'd like to go first with your 2-minute introduction, and Debbie will, when you have 30 seconds left, she'll show you the yellow card, and when your time is up, the red paper. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Brenda Dahl, and I first wanted to thank the Women's Club for having us here tonight. I wanted to thank you all for being here. I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience, and thank Mr. Zinkowski for being here tonight. For those of you who don't know me, I just wanted to give you a little bit of my background. I grew up here in Kenosha and graduated from Kemper High School. After high school, I attended the University of Wisconsin Madison Business School. I graduated there with a double major in business, in marketing and risk management. I graduated with honors. After law school, I began working in Milwaukee at the home office of Northwestern Mutual Life. Sorry, hope you could hear me. And then that's actually the job that helped put me through law school. So after I went to Marquette Law School and I graduated magna cum laude from Marquette, and then I clerked at Northwestern Mutual Life for a little bit. And then I eventually was hired at the law firm of Michael Best and Friedrich, which is one of the second biggest law firms in Wisconsin. But then eventually I came back to Kenosha, where my roots are. My family's here. My husband is a firefighter, had a residency requirement, and so we love the Kenosha area, and that's why we came back here. When I first came back to Kenosha, I started working at Rizzo and Dearson in private practice there. I practiced a wide variety of law, and I stayed there until I was eventually appointed as a guardian ad litem by the Kenosha County Circuit Court judges. So now I practice as a guardian ad litem, and I also have my own private practice. And in that job, I'm virtually in court every day of the week. I participate in trials. Most weeks, sometimes 2 and 3 days a week in trials, so I do have a lot of courtroom experience. But now, why did I decide to run for judge in the village of Pleasant Prairie? And I think my biggest reason is because I love this village, and everybody that I talk to loves the village. Okay, I'm running out of time.
Okay.
But I think all the residents love living here. They like their elected officials. They think there's a lot of
We'll get,
great. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was a yellow card. I apologize.
You didn't get to see the yellow one.
Thank you.
okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Mr. Zinkowski.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you to the Pleasant Prairie Women's Club for hosting us. Thank you all for coming out tonight. This is a great night, a great opportunity for all of us to be here. I'm Dick Jankowski, and I'm the runner-up in the Kenosha News least flattering photo contest. I think Punxsutawney Phil won that one. But the reason that I'm running for municipal judge is because it is an opportunity to serve this community that my family and I chose to call our home for the last 18 years. And I'm a Kenosha native, a graduate of Carthage College and the University of Wisconsin Law School. I've been a prosecutor standing up for you for the last 32 years, handling cases from speeding tickets to some of the most difficult homicide cases, including the state's first cold case homicide that happened here in Pleasant Prairie. And I've represented the interests of the people of the state of Wisconsin. And that's a very important thing because that experience in dealing with criminal law parallels almost exactly the type of work that represents the bulk of the cases in our municipal court. The reason I'm running is because I want to make a difference. It's not a matter of looking for another job or trying to have a title on the name. I've had my 15 minutes of fame over the years. But what I want to do is I want to make a difference. I want to take a court that has been neglected, that has failed to keep pace with the times, that in many instances is inaccessible, it's not very transparent, and it needs to become more attuned to the community. It needs to partner with this community. It needs to offer the excellence that the rest of our village services offer. And what I've done from when I made my decision to run is I've communicated with you from day one what some of these problems were and the common sense, simple solutions that I offered to fix them. It takes a lot of work. I have the time, I have the talent, and I have the desire to make a difference. That's why I'm asking for the honor of your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with the questions, and they are a minute and a half. And again, when you have 30 seconds left, we'll show you the yellow card.
I'll try to
Okay, and we'll start alphabetical order, so we'll start with Mrs. Dahl again. If there are new court programs put into place, where would the money come from to pay for them?
I think that's a very good question. I think that the budget in the village and around the state are very tight at this time. And so my goal in this court is not to put in any programs that are going to cost the taxpayers more money, because I don't think our budget supports it. There are some changes that I believe we could make to the court that do not cost taxpayer money, but I don't believe we should be spending money on a court that's already, I believe, running quite efficiently. And I have done some research on this court and compared it to other courts. And so I don't want to spend a lot of money on making major changes that will burden the taxpayer. I also don't want to make changes to the court that are going to make this court run more difficult. This court is about the citizens of Pleasant Prairie. Most people that come into a municipal court are coming in for a thing like a traffic ticket, and most people are representing themselves. So, in my opinion, we don't want to complicate the court so that people feel like they have to come into court with a lawyer. So my goal is to keep the court simple, keep it running efficiently. Right now, cases are resolved. They can be resolved at the initial appearance in the court. I think that's great. I think we have the ability to push cases through court quickly, and that's what people want. So that's my goal, rather than spending taxpayer money.
Well, unfortunately, we're not doing many of those things, and we're not doing them very well. We have some drunk driving cases that have been sitting around for over a year. We need to get to the backlog of a number of things. We have an isolated court that's in the technological Stone Age. We administer basic justice well, but when we deny people access to this court by inflexible scheduling that does not meet the needs of the public, we deny justice. When we have no web presence except for a way that you can pay your fine, we deny justice. We deny those opportunities to the citizens of Pleasant Prairie and the end users of this court. The changes that I propose will be almost cost neutral, or in fact will benefit the community. We can take right now, you can watch TV, you can use your iPhone and deposit a check. You can talk to your friends in the Army in Afghanistan on your iPad. You ought to be able to appear in this court doing that. That doesn't cost anything, that's free. Moving our court scheduling so that, for example, a third shift police officer can come in first thing in the morning instead of waiting for the afternoon, and promoting public safety so he or she can go home and get some sleep, that's free. It doesn't cost money to do things smart. It makes money. But this is not a cash register court, and I will not be the judge, and I will never be the judge of a cash register court. Our goal is to administer justice. We need to be fiscally responsible, and I will be that, but our goal is justice.
Thank you. Okay, next question, and Mr. Jakowski, you'll have this one first. How many tickets does municipal court process each year? How does it compare to Kenosha?
Well, that's a good question. I'm told that we have about 100 cases a week. I don't have the exact statistics because that's one of the problems. One of the problems that we have in this court is we don't communicate well with this community. When was the last time that you picked up the municipal newsletter of the Village of Pleasant Prairie and saw any report in there from the municipal judge? Our friends over in Fitchburg, which is a very comparable community, they publish an annual report that lists their cases, that communicates with people so that you can see, if you are a resident of that community, what your judge is doing and how your taxpayer dollars are being spent. So the number of cases isn't as important in how that stacks up. It's what we do to communicate what this court is doing in terms of serving the community, the programs that we have to partner with our community, the programs that we have to get together with people in this community and join us at the table to come up with creative, no-cost solutions to deal with our problems involving underage alcohol and drug abuse, among others. Those are the things we should be focusing on. Thank you. And those are the things I will focus on.
Yes. Can you repeat the question once more?
I sure can. How many tickets does the municipal court process each year? How does it compare to Kenosha?
Okay, I actually did look into this, and the information was fairly easy to get. I called the village, and they were able to provide that information. I agree with Mr. Jankowski that there could be better ways to get this information onto the website and get some information onto the court about the website, but ultimately it was easy to find if you made a call to ask. The staff here was all very polite, and they helped me every time I called with a question. But the number of tickets that the village has, in 2002, there were about 2,500 citations issued. And in 2012, that number more than doubled to over 5,000 tickets. And from what I am told by the previous judge, those cases are still being processed in the same amount of time that we processed them 10 years ago. So I guess I would beg to differ in saying that this court is run inefficiently. They essentially have not added any new staff, and that they are processing double the amount of tickets. So I agree they could do a better job, maybe have something in a newsletter once a month telling the public how the court is doing, adding some more information onto the website about how to contact the court. The good thing that Pleasant Prairie has, they've set this court up so great, is that this court has somebody on staff 40 hours a week. There are many municipalities that do not have court staff, so you call and you can't get somebody on the phone. This court has somebody here 40 hours a week to answer your phone calls, to take an email, and so they're very accessible in that way. I think that that information just needs to be out there a little bit more prominently. Okay.
Drunk driving cases are some of the most important cases the municipal judge handles. What experience do you have with drunk driving cases? I'm sorry, that was.
Okay. I have never prosecuted a drunk driving case. I'm obviously not a prosecutor, but I have looked into this topic. I know that, I believe that Mr. Jankowski was talking about possibly having some sort of, that he was saying cases are being slowed down because of not being able to process lab work for drunk drivers at the state lab. And that he has proposed that we speed up these drunk driving cases by choosing a different lab. And he can correct me if I'm misstating his policy. I have a real issue with that policy because I believe that that does not take into account the different role of a prosecutor and a judge. There are two very different roles. A judge is supposed to be independent, and a judge is not in charge of figuring out what crime lab the prosecution should use. And I think that if a judge does something like that, that's a conflict of interest, and that he needs to actually recuse himself from all of those cases. So ultimately, I think this court is not the problem with handling drunk driving cases slowly. It is the prosecution. This court, from what I am told, could have a case, the intake on a case would be about 30 days, and a trial on a drunk driving case could be scheduled within 30 days. There's no backlog in the court, so that case could be scheduled right away. The problem is actually with the prosecution, and that's not a job that the judge, or that's not something that a judge can fix, because that would be a conflict of interest.
Okay.
Well, I beg to differ, and the Wisconsin Supreme Court begs to differ because Supreme Court Rule 60.05 sub 2 specifically states, a judge may speak, write, lecture, teach, and participate in other extrajudicial activities concerning the law, the legal system, the administration of justice, and in fact notes in the commentary, as a judicial officer and person specially learned in the law, a judge is in a unique position to contribute to the improvement of the law. Selecting the lab isn't the issue. It's saying we are going to dispose of the case in X number of days, and you're going to have to find the lab to do it, and it's working to improve the statute so that we can tax that cost back. By no means is it a conflict of interest, and that's a misstatement of the law, and it's a misstatement of fact. Now, to get down to drunk driving cases, I prosecuted a guy by the name of Clarence William Bush. He is responsible nationwide for founding Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. I have prosecuted hundreds of drunk driving cases, and I have a conviction rate approximately 96% on the original charge. So I not only have prosecuted them, I have taught police officers, lawyers, and judges across the state, even in New York City, with regard to how to properly prosecute, investigate, and deal with these cases. Drunk drivers, I know from drug court experience, they are time bombs, and we need to deal with them and need to deal with them efficiently, effectively, and we need to impose a strict system of justice timelines so that they don't escape justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Jankowski, you're up again with a new question. What is the judge's role in shaping policies and ordinances for the village?
Well, I think the judge's role, I think I just alluded to it. A judge has a duty to do more than just sit up here and say guilty or not guilty. That's on a specific individual case. The administration of justice is a different concept than justice alone. Judges and lawyers have a duty to work for the improvement of the administration of justice. And so when you see something that's antiquated, you can do two different things. We actually have ordinances sometimes that conflict with each other. I have a history, and I've been involved with this village for many years. When I've seen deficiencies in the ordinance, I have come to this board, and we have worked together to make those improvements. For example, we were missing when we went from a town to a village, we never had an ordinance that actually created the police department. That was an oversight. I came into Mr. Polikoff and I said, guess what? We've got a little bit of a problem here. And we took care of it within a month. We took care of that problem. We dealt with clean indoor air for ordinances. I was involved with trying to put the lid on payday loan stores in the village. So there are things that a judge can do when you see, and should do. You are ethically permitted and encouraged as a judge to work for the improvement of the law and the administration of justice. That does not affect individual cases. That's a broader concept. Thank you.
I would disagree with those statements. I would say if you look at how our country was founded, it is founded on the separation of powers. There's the executive branch, there's the legislative branch, and there's the judicial branch. And I'll give you the example of the Supreme Court of our United States. The Supreme Court of our United States does not tell our Congress and our senators how to make law, because there needs to be a separation of power. There should be checks and balances on those powers, on those two branches of government. That is specifically how our government was set up and how our government runs. And so I believe that the village residents elected some great trustees. We have great people working here, and they have entrusted those people to make their law. And when they're electing a judge, they're entrusting the judge to administer that law to every citizen in a fair and independent manner. They are not electing a judge to write the law. So I believe a judge should take a very fine line and make sure that they're clear on that separation of powers, because everybody that comes in front of a judge has to be treated fairly. And if a judge is helping to write that law, there could be some big questions on whether or not the judge is actually treating every citizen that comes before them in a fair manner. And that's what I'm about. I'm about listening to all the citizens. This is what the court is about, the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mrs. Dahl, you're back up for a new question. And it's a two-parter. Have either of the candidates been to the court when it's in session? And then how is the municipal court different from criminal court?
Is that starting with me? Sorry, okay. I have represented clients in this court. This court is different from a criminal court because it's not a criminal court. It is a court where a judge cannot put people in jail except for non-payment of a ticket. And so it's very different from a criminal court. The more serious criminal cases are down at the circuit court in Kenosha County. And so a judge here is a lot more limited in what he can rule on, like putting people in jail. But also it's different in that the judge is writing tickets. And so for a lot of people, this is the first time they will ever, or the judge doesn't write the tickets, I'm sorry, the police would be. But essentially, for a lot of people, it's the first and only time they will ever enter into a courtroom for a speeding ticket or something like that. So you have a very different population than you see down in the Kenosha County Circuit Court. So I think the best thing to remember about this court is that people may be here only one time. We hope to see them only one time for something like a ticket. We want to treat them with courtesy. We want to explain to them what's going on in the courtroom because they might not have any idea what's going on. We want to make sure that we're listening to both sides and that we're treating them fairly. And that will be what I will do if I'm elected judge.
The answer is yes, I have. And more importantly, there are differences and there are similarities. Municipalities in Wisconsin can enact ordinances that parallel the criminal code in large measure. And there's also certain things such as zoning and particular local ordinances, but most of them, for example, traffic ordinances must be in strict conformity with the state law. Many other ordinances must be in conformity with the state law. So the substantive law, in other words, what's in the book, are you guilty or not guilty because it says you can or can't do something, that's the same as in criminal court. The burden of proof is different. The burden of proof is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It's clear, satisfactory, and convincing evidence. You don't have a jury in municipal court. It's only a judge. Because they're civil matters and not criminal matters, you don't have a right, for example, against self-incrimination. You don't have a right to have an attorney appointed for you if you can't afford one. So there are some similarities, there are some differences. One of the things that I believe in is that a judge certainly can take the lead in ensuring that this court belongs to the people, because it's your court. It's not my court, it's not Judge Easton's court, it's your court. And because of that, as Brenda pointed out, the first experience you may have with the court is in a ticket, and you want to make sure that you are treated fairly. You also want to make sure that you are treated with courtesy and with efficiency, and one way to be rude to people sometimes is to make them wait and wait and wait. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Jankowski, you're up for the new question.
Okay.
What is your relationship with law enforcement, and how will it affect your role as judge?
Well, it's interesting because one of the things that I understand, having been a police officer, is what officers go through. And one of the things that's important about is that, you know, and I want to be very clear about that, because any police officer that I know knows that, boy, I don't rubber stamp what they do. I'm sometimes a very severe critic, and that's my job. It's my job to be a minister of justice as a prosecutor. So, you know, I have an experience for decades of working with law enforcement, so that it doesn't affect my decision-making in terms of whether or not I'm impartial or not, because sometimes I can be, as I said, very, very critical of bad police work. But what it does allow me to do is understand some of the things that our officers face. And one of the things that we have in this community is that our court has failed to communicate with its end users by having only one court time. We have a situation where we make it very inconvenient for these officers who work all night to have to wait until the afternoon to come to court for a trial. That's wrong. It's inefficient. It's not cost-effective. I want to change our court times so that we have mostly a morning session and one evening session per month, so that we make it more convenient for you, so that you won't have to take off to come into court if you get that ticket from work. You might be able to come in. We can bring officers in off the road without paying overtime, and we can let those officers who work all night go home and get some sleep so that they're fresh and promote the public safety when they're on duty. Thank you.
Hi. I do deal with police officers in many of my cases as a guardian ad litem. And so I'm familiar with their job, and I deal with their testimony and things like that in the courtroom, so I'm familiar. Also, my husband is in the protective services. He's a firefighter. So we do have many friends that are police officers also. But I don't think that that will affect my ability to be impartial on this job, because my job as a guardian ad litem is to be an impartial person to the court, to evaluate what's happening on both sides, and I can do that with the police officers. I did take the time to talk to Officer Randy Miles out here, or I believe he's detective. He is the head of the Police Officers Association out here in Pleasant Prairie. He indicated to me that in general, most of the police officers here are very happy with the way the court is run, that he does not see any major problems with the court. He did say that the one thing that he hoped could happen is what Mr. Jankowski said, possibly extending hours, maybe one time a month, so that some of the officers would be able to testify at night, so that they wouldn't get woken up when they're sleeping during the day if they're third shift workers. But I guess I would clarify that in that I read the ordinances, and I believe that is not just up to me to make that decision. That is up to the village trustees. And so before I did anything like that, I would want to get the input of the trustees, make sure we had a meeting with the police officers and myself before we made any changes like that. I want to do things like that by consensus.
Thank you. New question. Mrs. Dowell, you start. Would you support the use of a collection agency to get unpaid court fines collected?
I would. I've actually, I think the Kenosha News had interviewed us, and I believe that's one of the issues that I spoke with the Kenosha News about. I'm not sure if that article has made it out yet. But in speaking with some people at the village, what I believe has happened, well, the village has some very good technology. They put in a new computer system about 2 to 3 years ago. And they also put in a computer system that can tax intercept taxes if people are not paying their tickets. And I believe this year or last year, they collected, I think, over $100,000 in tax intercept. So they've done a really good job in collecting money on old overdue tickets. What they still need to work on, I believe, and I believe the trustees, I hope, would agree with me on this, is that there are many tickets that are uncollectible from out of state. You can't, when you issue a warrant to collect a ticket, you can only pick that person up if they're in Kenosha, Racine, or Walworth County. So if it's somebody living out of state, it's hard to pick them up to collect on that ticket. So my idea is that we send these tickets to collections. And what that would do is it would get the money into our pockets by collections. And I also believe it could save the village money. When you put somebody in jail, they typically, let's say they had a $100 ticket. For every day they're in jail, they would get $50 taken off that ticket. So if they're put in jail for 2 days, the ticket is gone, and the village is paying to put them in jail. So they're losing, if it's a $100 ticket, the village is losing the $100, and they're losing the $72 by putting that person in jail. So I think that we could save the taxpayers a lot of money by putting some of those tickets out there for collection.
Thank you.
I absolutely agree with Brenda. I had the same thoughts concerning this because that's one thing that we haven't been doing and we should be doing. Now, we have a great clerk and an assistant clerk, and one of the things that our clerk has done has implemented a computer program that does a very good job of tracking current and recent cases. We have a backlog that we need to attack, and we need to involve collection agencies on that. One of the first things that I would do is I would ask our village staff to audit that, because we need to either take care of those old fines or get them off the books. One of the things that I will do is I will work harder as your judge. I have no problem coming in and making sure that we have days of atonement where we bring in the people in mass who are not paying their fines and make them account for themselves. So I don't have a problem with doing that. And one other thing that we can do, and I would implement, a very simple, cost-effective change. We normally give people 60 days to pay their fine. Well, we have to have an indigency hearing if they don't pay that fine within that time. Instead of sending out a notice to them, one thing I will do is, when you come to court, you will get that date. And either that fine will be paid or arrangements made for an extension within that time frame, or on the 70th day, you will be back in front of us explaining why. We should give that date out early, make sure they have it, then there's no excuse. We don't have to send out a different date. We just get it done in one fell swoop. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Janowski, new question. Describe the optimal relationship and function between the municipal judge and village treasurer.
The village treasurer or trustees?
Treasurer.
I think the job of the municipal judge and the village treasurer are very, very dissimilar. Basically, the treasurer is the person who's responsible for people to pay their fines and court obligations to them. So realistically speaking, the relationship would be the same as with any other department head, although there's not a lot of interaction. The person who does that type of work on a day-to-day basis in terms of balancing the books and working with the treasurer and that is our excellent clerk of court. And that's the person who is probably most hands-on in terms of having the relationship with the treasurer. I hope I answered the question, and if you ask the question, that's the best answer I can give you. Because those two people don't really work very closely together. The clerk works more with the treasurer because they're both here 5 days a week and they have that relationship.
Yeah, I wanted to make one comment on the last question. I believe that the court is already doing that they're sending out indigency hearings. When a ticket is due at 60 days, they're already scheduling the indigency hearing 7 or so days after. So I believe the court is already doing that, and I would continue doing that. On the issue about the municipal judge and the village treasurer, I would agree with Mr. Jankowski that they're separate entities, but I think it's really important that the municipal judge coordinate with the village treasurer and meet probably on a regular basis if it's possible, because they are the two parties who can figure out how to get some of these tickets collected, these tickets that are getting old, those kinds of things. So I think it would be a very good idea for those two people to coordinate on a regular basis to make sure we're getting that money in and that there's not a backlog in collections.
Okay, Mrs. Dahl, you're back up. New question. What are the most important things for a judge to do when running a court session in municipal court?
Okay. Well, when I look at that, I guess I think about the many courtroom experiences that I have had and some of the favorite judges that I like to appear in front of. And I would say the same things apply to the municipal court judge. And that is, when I take a client into court, I want my client to feel comfortable that this judge is going to listen to both sides, that he's going to be courteous and respectful, and I'm not going to feel scared to tell the judge what I have to tell them. So I think that's one of the most important things that a municipal court judge should do. And again, I want to go back to this point that for a lot of people, this is the first and only time that they will ever be in a courtroom. So I want to make sure they feel comfortable. I want to make sure I explain the process to them. This is their court. And I don't want them leaving feeling like they haven't gotten to hear or tell me their whole story, or that I haven't listened to their side of the story, or that I've been biased to one side or the other. And again, some of my favorite judges are the judges that are really able to do that, to be respectful and courteous and kind to everybody. And other smaller things, like making sure if we have officers in court, we take their cases first so that they can get out of court and save taxpayer money. If we have a pregnant woman in court, or a mother who couldn't, or father who didn't have daycare and they have their children in court, let's handle their cases first so that they can get out of court. So that just to help, a common courtesy for the people coming into the courtroom.
This is a subject near and dear to my heart, and I agree with Brenda and more. Many years ago, I was 18 years old, turning 18. I was involved in a minor fender bender in Milwaukee, and I thought that the ticket should have went to the other driver. I talked to the city attorney's office, and they said, go to court, plead not guilty, we'll sit down and sort it out. And so I went to court, I pled not guilty. The judge said $10 in costs. The bailiff turned around and said, Judge, he said not guilty. And the judge said, well, I knew someone was going to cause trouble here today. How do you think I felt? What do you think my impression of that judge and the administration of justice and the fairness was in that court? I will not be that judge. Let me give you the flip side of that. I had to go up to Minneapolis on a traffic homicide case to get a search warrant to recover the vehicle that was involved. And I sat in front of a judge waiting for moments in the Minnesota Hennepin County Court. And he turned and he was scheduling something with the lawyers and the litigants, and he said, this is your court. I'm here to preside over it, but I'm here for you. I'm here to accommodate your schedules. Now tell me, which judge would you rather appear in front of? Thank you.
New question, Mr. Jankowski. What are the most important things for a judge to do when running a court session in municipal court?
What are the most important things for a judge to do? I think that kind of parallels the last question. But I think the most important thing first is to ensure that everyone gets a fair shake. And that starts even before coming to court. That makes sure that individuals, for example, because you don't have a lawyer unless you hire one, so that we need to have information for people who can't afford lawyers, like, for example, the Middleton Court and the Fitchburg Court and the Town of Salem Court. We provide information for people online so that they can help prepare their cases when they come to court. It's not just enough to be fair and just and to be patient and kind and to listen. We also need to be able to enable people to present and prepare their cases so that they're able to have fairness and justice. I think also one of the things we can do is be sensitive in scheduling things. By offering people flexibility in scheduling cases, that means that someone may not have to miss work to be there. And another thing that we can do with regard to that as well is to look at the schedules of our police officers who may be witnesses in cases, and we can look at their off days, and we can try to accommodate their schedules so that we don't bring somebody in on their off day. And we can also maybe save some taxpayer money by bringing people in when we don't have to pay them overtime. There's lots of things we can do in our court sessions. As I said, this kind of dovetails the last question, so I want to add on to it just by saying some simple, common sense things. Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of that I think was a very similar question, so a lot of it I would go back to my last answer, but I guess one of the most important things I hear around town when I talk to people about the court system, and not just necessarily the municipal court, but the circuit courts, are efficiency. And why was my court case rescheduled? And why was my court case rescheduled again? And why has my court case been going on for a year and a half? And I see some of the attorneys in the room nodding their heads, because it happens. Fortunately, this municipal court is already running very efficiently. Like I said, many cases are resolved on their first time in court. If not, pretrials can be set within 2 weeks, and trials can be set within a month after that. This court calendar is not backlogged like many of the courts in Kenosha, and so I think that's one of the best things we can do is run cases efficiently. People don't have time to take off work and come into court multiple times. And I guess another thing that this court does, and most municipal courts I believe do, are that you can make your first appearance by phone or by mail. You can do that here, and our court clerks here in the village are available all the time to answer questions like that and to help with scheduling. If a person has a problem with scheduling, that would be another courtesy, just to make sure your clerks are being courteous of people. If they have a job conflict, can we reschedule it to another day? We don't want someone to lose their job because they have to come into court. And so those would be things that I would be cognizant of.
Okay, new question. Mrs. Dell, how diverse is your background, and how will it assist you as a municipal judge?
My background, I believe, is very diverse. I think you heard me state in my opening statement, I have a business degree. I've worked in corporate America for one of the largest corporations in the state. I've worked for one of the largest law firms in the state, where I practiced multiple areas of law, including writing municipal ordinances, doing real estate law. I've represented people in criminal cases. I've represented people in family law and Social Security law, so a diverse background. But I think the most important thing that I'm doing now to prepare me as a judge is acting as a guardian ad litem. And I'm not sure if most of you know what that job is, but I'm appointed to represent, I'm appointed by the circuit court judges, and I'm appointed to represent someone such as a child in a divorce proceeding to make a recommendation to the court of what should happen to that child. And other cases maybe award somebody who's incompetent. And so those are some of the very most heart-wrenching cases. But my job is to evaluate everything, to look at all sides of the case, from both parents' sides, from the child's side, and take an independent approach, and then make a recommendation to the judge on how the judge should rule. So it's very similar to what a judge does, in that I'm making the recommendation to the court as to what I think after making the doing the investigation and applying the law. So I think that is the single most thing that qualifies me for this job. The best thing. I mean, I believe all of it together, but that one thing is very important.
Thank you. I come from a family involved in small business, and not only was I involved in that, but also in the public and private sector as a manager. My 3 different careers, in addition to being a police officer, I was also a journalist, and I was a department head. And so I know what it's like to manage budgets and put them together and have to deal with administration of taxes and numbers and things like that. But one of the things I think is very important in my background is the diversity of things that I do as an attorney. I don't just prosecute cases and have this parallel involvement. I'm an officer of the American Bar Association. I'm right now vice chair, as former chair of the editorial board, so I pass over the information that we do to train lawyers nationwide. I help write the standards, the national standards for the fair treatment of children involved in sexual abuse cases and child abuse cases. I was the primary drafter. I helped write Wisconsin's Bill of Rights for child victim and witnesses with State Senator Barbara Ulichny. I helped write the Wisconsin statute dealing with elder abuse homicide. So I've been involved in training and in writing and in dealing with people nationwide, not just in our community. And one other thing is I have a background in technology, and that's why I'm going to use those technology skills. I'm a member of the State Information Technology Committee. I've been saving taxpayers lots of money in my skills in doing that, and I want to use those technology skills to make our court more effective and more accessible to the public. It won't cost a lot of money. It just takes somebody who cares enough to do it. Thank you.
Okay, new question, Mr. Jankowski.
Thank you.
What have you specifically done to be of service to the village, and specifically, how did your experience assist you in doing it?
Well, one of the things, and I may dovetail a prior answer, and I apologize for that, but one of the things that I've been involved with the village is this is not, you know, I'm not a stranger into this room. I've been here many times over the years, working together with the village board on many different issues. When we, for example, dealt with smoke-free dining and smoke-free restaurants, we were in this room and we got a lot of cooperation from the village board. When we saw problems dealing with predatory lending practices in the payday loan stores, we worked together to put the kibosh on that and their spread of those stores in the community. When we fought to preserve our police service, that's Pleasant Prairie, by the way, has a fine police department that is one of the most cost-effective in the state of Wisconsin. It is at the bottom of the barrel in terms of spending and efficiency. And we fought, and I was instrumental in that fight to keep our police department. And not only that, but also to make sure we corrected the village ordinances because we were missing that chapter when they did the conversion. So I worked very closely with the village board, and I have no problem while maintaining judicial independence with sitting down with them and saying, look, you know, we have some needs, and this is something that, unfortunately, we have a great guy as our village judge, but he has been a stranger in this room when it comes to communicating with the village board. I will communicate with them, and I will make sure that I fight for what the court needs. Thank you.
Can you repeat the question one more time, please?
I sure can. What have you specifically done to be of service to the village, and specifically, how did your experience assist you in doing it?
Well, I guess most of my service to the village is not directly to the village, but service to my children. I have 3 young children, and so I do a lot of service work in their schools in the village, or at their school in Prairie Lane. And I applaud Mr. Jankowski for the work he's done for the village. I do a lot of pro bono work, which is free legal work, and so I've helped some people in the community with free legal advice. I'm involved that way. But my true belief is that we've hired a very, very competent, or that we've elected very, very competent trustees in the village, and I think that they have done a great job. And I guess I wouldn't pretend to know more than the village trustees on how to run the village. I think they're doing a great job. If they ever needed my assistance in something, I would be happy to help them out. But again, I think that a judge, if elected as a judge, we need to be very careful of this fine line between the judiciary and the executive branch of the government. They really shouldn't cross. A judge should not be drafting rules that are coming before them, because I believe that's a bias to the parties. I believe you should be an independent judge, and you need to look at every case individually and treat each party fairly and independently. So, thank you.
Okay, new question. A lot of the questions do touch on the same thing, so we're going to finish up with this here. What are the issues facing the court, and what changes do you feel need to be made to improve the court?
Is that me first? Okay. Yeah, a lot of this I've already talked about. I think that we definitely could do a better job of putting the court on the website and making the public more aware of how to get a hold of people in the court, because they're there and they're very helpful every time I've called. I think it'll be helpful for the public to know exactly how to get a hold of the court. And and do that. I also think it wouldn't hurt to put some of the procedures on the website so that people can know when they're coming into court, this is what might happen when I come into court. This is the procedure to follow. Because people are nervous when they come into a court. And so I think anything that can help the public feel more comfortable when they come into the court, that's really important. So I think that would be helpful. I talked a little bit about this issue of collecting on old fines. I think we can do, I hope that the trustees would agree that we could work on that together if I was elected judge. And I think just keep running the court very efficiently. I think, as I said, we have a really great computer system. From what I've told, it is state-of-the-art compared to the system just in Kenosha. It's virtually paperless here, where they don't have that in the city of Kenosha, where they process 4 or 5 times more tickets than we do here in the village. And unlike other municipalities, we have staff here 24/7. And even though the judge is not in court all the time, I would be willing to be on call to the clerks here at the court to answer questions as they needed. I'm always accessible. If you don't know me, I'm a friendly and open person. I'm always willing to talk to people, and I'm willing to take advice wherever I need it. I don't pretend to know it all.
Thank you, Brenda.
Oh,
Thank
okay, thank you.
All right. Question, you want it reread or?
Yes, please.
Okay. What are the issues facing the court? What changes need to be made and to improve it?
Thank you. As I've said, and I think we dovetail lots of different things, basically, there are a number of issues that we need to do, and they're not going to take a lot to fix, just need somebody who's going to do, someone who's going to have the time and the talent to do it, not be balancing outside interests. One of the things that's important is that we need to be more accessible. We need to be responsive to the end users. We need to be flexible in our scheduling so that people can come to court. Makes little sense to give a kid a ticket because he's skipping school and then, tell him to come to court during the school day. We have no outreach to the community. We have no programs for youthful offenders, especially alcohol and drug use. We have no online presence except to pay fines. We have no working relationship with the village board. I am going to address all of those issues from day one. That's why I'm a candidate. And I want to talk about one thing because our time is limited, and that is youthful offenders, because efficiency isn't always justice. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. We see these young people in the morgue in this community as older people because they haven't been dealt with when they were younger. 40-some overdose deaths in this community. We need to have a program where we address underage alcohol and drug abuse, because my experience as your drug court prosecutor for over 32 years as a prosecutor, I can tell you one thing: most of these people started when they were as young as 12 or 13. This is not an option. It
Okay.
must be done. I will do it.
Thank you.
It's being done elsewhere in Wisconsin, and it will be a high priority.
Thank you. We're
Thank
going to, and you can go up first for your 2-minute closing. So just go right into your 2-minute closing.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks everyone for being here. And I want to talk about that a little bit too, because this has been the problem. I have TVs in my basement from the 1980s. They work, but the flat panel HD TVs upstairs work a lot better. This court has been operating in the 1980s for the most part. It needs to get with the times, and it needs to be open and accessible to the people. I will have an open door policy, but my number one priority, other than becoming accessible to the people and accountable by opening up what we do so that you can scrutinize what the judge does, is to reach out and develop community partnerships to deal with problems involving young people. Fitchburg, a comparable community, does it. Middleton does it. Beaver Dam has a teen court. Menominee Falls has a teen court program. Why doesn't Pleasant Prairie, when we push for municipal excellence and we tell people with an excellent community we have in terms of our village services, why do we have a court that's in the Stone Age? And we are. And we have to accept that fact, and we have to be willing to change it. It won't take a lot to change, but if we say it doesn't need change, we're wrong. It does. It won't take a lot. Other communities are doing these things. Why aren't we? I have the time. I have the talent. I have the desire. I will devote that to this court and to serving you, because it's not my court, it's your court. I have a life of public service, and this is something that I want to do to be of service to you and to be of service of this community. This is my home. I want to leave it a better place than what it is today. It's a small thing that we can do, but you know what? If we can reach some of these young people, if we can reach one or two of them, we have done something positive. We can do better. The status quo, unfortunately, is not good enough. I want to be your judge. I humbly ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. I would agree with Mr. Jankowski that we could do some more with these juvenile offenders, but my fear is that it may cost a lot of money to do that. And so I'm willing to look into that, but not before we know how much it's going to cost the taxpayer, and not before we know whether or not it's in the budget. If we look at this new court, there's going to be a mental health court implemented in Kenosha, and the court received a grant of $116,000 to start that court. And so we really need to look at the finances of how we would start a court like that. If some of those services and that are going to cost the village $116,000, I don't think the citizens of the village are spending our money in that way at this time when budgets are so tight. So I think before we undertake a large undertaking like that, there needs to be a lot of discussion between the judge, the village trustees, the community, and the police officers. That would be my stance on that. But going on from that, I just wanted to thank everybody very much for being here tonight. If you have further questions, please call me. I would love to talk to you after the meeting. I would love for you to call me at home. I'm open to any of your suggestions on what you want to change in this court if I'm elected. I want to build this court by consensus because it is about you. The court's about the village of Pleasant Prairie. If I'm elected, I will work very hard for this village. I'm a hard worker. I'm a quick learner. I have a broad base of experience, and I believe it will serve this court well. I am your common sense candidate. I don't want to spend money on programs that are not necessary. I know that public safety is a concern, and that is always going to be my top priority, but my other top priority is fiscal responsibility, and that means not spending our taxpayer dollars on things that don't need to be fixed. I again want to stress that I believe I'm the most qualified for this job. I believe I have the best courtroom demeanor and the best ability to listen to both sides when I'm a judge, and I believe my job as a guardian ad litem makes me exceptionally qualified to be a judge because that is what I do. I listen to both sides and advise the judge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for participating tonight. Thank you for coming. The questions were great. If you do have any more questions for our candidates, please, email them, call them, visit with them. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. By the way,